Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
But I do have some questions.
There are more questions than answers.
Radio Commands, talk today.
If you're ready to talk, we're willing to listen.
Well, I really enjoy this program today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
May God bless every person.
Hey, good afternoon. Sometimes Mondays roll around and you forget that there was a Friday before. As a friend always reminds me, why is it that Friday is so close to Monday, but Monday is so far from Friday? Well, we're going to give you a chance to be a part of all that happens. It's our monthly Mental Health Matters, so stay tuned for Talk Today.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today, the Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program. We ask our listeners to avoid statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use any indecent language or make any statement which is false or misleading. Email talktoday@candw.ky or call 1-800-534-8255.
Courtesy of Flow.
Cayman's #1 network that connects you to your world like never before.
Let your voice be heard. Once again, here's your host, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome. And thank you so much for joining us. It is a wonderful opportunity to be able to not only have on a very regular basis every month, the first Monday, our monthly Mental Health Matters, but to be joined by Dr. Alexandra Ward. And if you happen to be watching us on YouTube, I feel bad for you because I shaved and you can see more of my mug. It's not a good day. But it's fun. I give thanks. Dr. Warden, thank you so much. I say this in joke and jest, but all seriousness. It really has been a wonderful opportunity to sit, observe, and to learn as we start to talk more openly and honestly about, health, including, the mental wealth and well-being of all of us. So good afternoon to you, Mom.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having us on today. And we have a powerhouse of a panel. I'm really excited for today's show. Today we'll be looking at what I've entitled Safe and Sex, Building Healthy Intimate Relationships. So something that we often talk about is domestic violence, and how to build healthy relationships has always been a popular issue on the show. But something that's been brought to my attention is the importance of appropriate sex education as well. So knowing what to do, how to do it, what to expect, how to have those conversations around things like consent and where and when to do it, and having respect in all conversations to make sure that everything is mutually beneficial for everyone involved in the relationship is really important. So we're hoping to cover a lot today.
Well, thank you very much. And you allowed us to be able to delve into a number of topics at times that only me and Carolina, only Carolina has had the nerve. I just happen to be.
I'm so glad we got her on today. This is definitely one of her areas.
But it is one of those topics that sometimes you don't realize how difficult it can be, not just for younger people, but for, I don't want to say older married people, but for everybody. And maybe having those discussions may allow us to be able to understand it. Now, as I go around the table, I have the opportunity to see Mr. Delaney, and I think it's good. We got another fella in the house. Maybe it just won't only be me getting in trouble. No, but seriously, I think the perspective is important. I could do intros, but I was just thinking on a walk down, seeing the excellent panel, and depending how they were assembled, respectfully ask each to maybe just a brief intro. Now, Ms. Mayor, I'm flipping a coin. Do I start from my left or my right? Do I actually go first? And I thought, you know what? Hey, let's just start with you.
That's because you like picking on me.
Was that obvious? I'm sorry.
So I'm Meher Lamba. I am a program facilitator with the Family Resource Center. We have lots of programs relating to healthy relationships and building those relationships as a couple, building those relationships with your children. And when you're talking about sex, particularly with kids, one of our programs that's really relevant now would be Talk Early, Talk Often. So we can talk a little bit more about that, and I'm excited to see where this conversation takes us today, and I think it's an important one to have.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Carolina.
I know you're worried, so I'll keep it short.
No, that was just about my stock portfolio. But
I'm Carolina Fejeda. I'm wearing my Child Protection and Sexuality Education Program Manager hat today. The Red Cross does a lot of work with child sexual abuse prevention, but we also do a lot of work with sexuality and gender education, which is an important component of any sort of discussion about healthy relationships. And we partner with the Health Services Authority to provide free HIV and STI testing to the community, which is something that needs to be part of the dialogue if anybody's deciding to be sexually active. So we'll get to that.
All right.
And I am Livia Siqueira. I'm the youth coordinator for the Cayman Islands Crisis Center. I work mostly with the teens at the Tire Lounge. So there's a youth program run by the Crisis Center. It's called Tire Lounge. It's for teen and young adults. It's from 14 to 21 year old. It's an after-school program from Tuesday to Friday from 3 to 8 p.m. So they can come there, and it's a safe place. It's a great place for them to come. It's a safe place. It's an open place, so they can come and talk about any issues that they're having, and you're happy to discuss with them any issues regarding mental health or safe relationships and things like that. And I also work with the kids at the shelter, which is usually younger kids. So we try to explain to them and the mothers about modeling healthy relationships for them to grow up to be healthy adults.
All right, thanks. Mr. Delaney.
Hello. Yes, I am Terry Delaney. I have a private practice here in Cayman. It's a real pleasure to be here for this, because it's a subject matter that I think we've needed to kind of take the lid off for a long time. It's something we're very much afraid to talk about. I'm really surprised the number of couples that have been together many years, that if I ask them, have you had, either prior to coming together as a couple or getting married or whatever, have you had serious conversations about sex? And they freeze and just kind of sit there like, were we supposed to? And it's like, but how can you live in a healthy sexual relationship without knowing about sex between each other? And so that it just needs to be talked about. It's a very serious topic, but we need to lighten up enough to be able to enjoy talking about it as much as we enjoy engaging in it. You know, it's a healthy, good, positive thing. And, you know, for those with this perspective, it is a gift from God. So we need to treat it with respect and enjoy it fully. So we'll see where it goes.
Indeed.
And I know your comment about thinking that he picks on you. That's everybody.
I'm learning that.
We all get it. And we all love it too.
But no, thank you. It's part of, making you feel invited and welcome, The compliments, sometimes some people say, oh, you're being too friendly, but, I'm West Bay, We're just good people.
There you go.
Tara has a private practice. I had a private bank account, but that's no longer. After I saw that commercial where, anyway, we won't go there. It's Natalie. Good afternoon, Mom.
Good afternoon. Well, Terry, I know one thing to help Sterling not pick on you and bring him chocolate. Because I've kind of
good quality
sweetened
chocolate
him up a little bit, right?
Oh, cheap stuff either, Terry.
I'll remember that. Bring some from Sweden. That'll surprise you.
Hand delivered.
Yes.
Anyways, my name is Natalie Baldwin, and I'm a mental health social worker, and I have experience working with at-risk youth and adults. And my specialty is play therapy and working kind of outside of the box, creative thinking, and doing some different things just like that. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation, because what you did say, Terry, I think it's a conversation to be had about having a healthy relationship and being able to have a healthy conversation about sex within the relationship. That's important with building the good communication. So.
And, of course, the lady who, honestly, is remarkable, and we all, I think, can agree. Without her, the show would not only be lacking, despite the great contribution of all our panelists all the time, but it wouldn't happen. So, Dr. Alexandra Watton, maybe a quick intro?
Yeah, no,
for
and
those.
thank you very much to Radio Cayman for allowing us to continue these really helpful and important discussions, especially the groundbreaking ones. And so I am Dr. Alexandra Bodden. I am an owner and psychologist at Encourse Cayman. We do testing as well as offer individual therapy and now group therapy for kids, teens, and adults. I'm also an adjunct lecturer at UCCI.
And I really appreciate you all allowing me to just do it that way instead of introducing you, because I think for the public to hear the different voices, but it also sets a tone as to not only what we want to speak of, but the perspective that on Ireland we have significant resources. As you were sharing, a couple of things came to my mind was the way our media, not just local media, not just the traditional media, but and in particular our young people, the way they engage, and still haven't got used to the word social media. That is not even an oxymoron. I don't know what to term that just yet. And then the way society responds to how everything is portrayed, and the way. And for today's discussion, I had a thought I may pursue it, but Miss Carolina says she's got to exit at one. I may not, but I may get courage. We'll see. But this discussion, is it still taboo even in today's world, where on one hand everything is open, people are not only voyeurs, people are public in many respects, but yet for some reason we're still sensitive, not necessarily sensible, but sensitive to the discussion, and even that may be putting it mildly. Why is that? I mean, how do we look at having the importance of healthy relations, sexual relations in relationships? Everybody looks to Carolina.
Do I start?
Yeah.
Sure.
Why
All right.
not?
I think that there's been a lot. It's kind of like there's a lot of information out there, but there the same way that you're talking about social media and everything else, there's a lot of information people can speak through other media or medium, but there's still that barrier when it comes to the personal, right? So it's just like you can talk about it online, you can make comments when it comes to it, but having that one-on-one conversation with your partner or partners is still something that I don't think that we've given people the skills to do. And if you look at the way in which we treat sex and sexuality pretty much from birth, we infantilize body parts, and then we somehow expect that at some point over, like, around puberty and whatnot, kids will go, from thinking that, haha, penis is a funny word, to, yes, well, let's take this seriously and respect your body. And it's just like, so we kind of set it up in that way where it is that we don't start by actually educating kids about their body parts and to sort of respect everything the same way, call everything by its proper name, and then somehow to make that transition to where it is that we can have those conversations and actually, think about not only and even for sort of my line of work, right? We focus so much on the STIs and the HIV and the prevention, and it's always, and how do you prevent pregnancy and whatnot? But we never talk about the good stuff. We never talk about the intimacy and the orgasms and any of those things. So it's like, it's always a connotation that comes where we can have this discussion about it in the third person, but when it's you and me in this relationship and, like what's happening with us, it becomes much more difficult.
All right. So Terry, if I could then bounce to you, you said it's a gift from God. There are those who subscribe to that. Some would say, well, with that, then you look at it being an act of service. The two partners giving of each other all, so that each receives all. And with that, you get intimacy, you get all the things that Carolina tell us that we should experience. There's so much struggle with using the words.
Orgasm. Try it.
It's
okay.
It's okay?
It's okay.
Multiple is okay.
If you're lucky, yes. Orgasm. Yes, it's okay.
Now I got a lot of people's attention, and even my mother's. I'm like, oh man. But yet we joking, Dr. Boyd.
If I can say,
Yeah.
because I know we've done similar panels before, and it's hard, and I agree, because I was raised Caymanian and very Christian as well. And I think this is one of the big conflicts about it, is that sex is a no-no. In school I was taught you have sex, you die. Or you get an STI, and then I think in those days, still called them all STDs, and then you die. Yeah. Or you get pregnant, and you kind of hope you die. So, it was never good, anything with sex. And after marriage, you're supposed to then just have this amazing relationship. But then on the flip side, there's also the dance hall culture in Cayman and soca and carnival, which is very sexualized and a much different portrayal than what we normally look for in most relationships. I think there's a lot of really mixed messages, but I think culturally it does make it hard to have these conversations. So I'm glad you said that, because I agree, and that's exactly what happens when we try to have these conversations. Most people don't start out on the air, though. Probably quite under pressure.
Hey, listen, I mean, it's only downhill from here.
One of the ways I look at it is when you look at an individual and their growth and development, they reach a point that's generally called puberty, around adolescence.
I'll get there sometime.
One day you'll be there, I guarantee. But it's a matter of total confusion. The body's changing incredibly. The hormones are changing. The perspectives, everything is changing in a very rapid time, and it's totally confusing. I think the entire race of human beings is going through puberty. We're really trying to kind of figure out, as a population of human beings, how do we handle this? How do we deal with this? With the internet and the incredible amount of information available, we're getting a million different messages. We're not sure what to do. I'm positive we've all had different messages from the past. One of them, you touched on this, is sex is dirty. You save it for the person you love. And you kind of go, what? That doesn't make a lot of sense. But I think that's what's happening, and I'm really grateful we have these kinds of opportunities to say, let's mellow it out a little bit and make it something that we can talk about. It's probably the most significant and intimate gift we can give our partner in a relationship. And I think we have to look at it that way. It's a gift I'm being given and that I'm giving. And if we look at it that way, we're going to enter into it with total respect.
All right. With that, pause, take our first break. When we come back, the phone lines are open. If you just want to listen, hey, that's fine. If you have the courage to call and ask a question, well, Susan is there. She doesn't even have to translate. You can just go right on air. 949-837, 1-800-534-8255. Please stay tuned for Talk Today.
King Sports Center takes pride in being more than just an ordinary gymnasium. For 14 years, their multi-purpose facility has been providing the community with a variety of sporting, recreational, and relaxation activities. King Sports Center has a bowling alley, lounge bar, multi-purpose rooms, powerhouse gym, rock climbing wall, bungee jumping, a 10,000 square foot rink, and so much more. For more information on their variety of services, call their friendly staff today at 946-5464 or email kings@candw.ky or visit www.kingsportscenter.com. King Sports Center, your one-stop shop for fitness, recreation, and relaxation.
Have you heard you could win a 7-night Caribbean cruise for 2 with the University College of the Cayman Islands?
What? No way. What are you talking about?
The UCCI alumni is giving you a chance to help them establish their charter by raffling off a cruise, and tickets are only $25.
What? That's awesome. Where do I get a ticket?
Tickets are available at the UCCI Administration Office, SRC Student Council, or any UCCI alum or board member. They're drawing the winner live on air March 4th.
Get your ticket today. Terms and conditions apply. For more information, visit ucci.edu.ky/raffle.
Would you like free roses this Valentine's Day? Buy a gift that can be cherished forever from Island Jewelers. And the roses are on us today. That's right. We'll buy the roses. Spend $350 US at any Island Jewelers and receive half dozen red roses from Celebrations for free. Island Jewelers is located in the Island Plaza under Margaritaville, Camana Bay, the airport, Kimpton Seafire, and Ritz-Carlton. Show her you love her today, forever, and always with Island Jewelers.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back to Talk Today. Thanks very much for joining us. It is our monthly Mental Health Matters. And, a show like this could not be facilitated without, Dr. Alexandra Bott, and certainly couldn't be accommodated with one of the panelists being Ms. Carolina Ferreira. So, she is the, what's her term? The Red Cross lady? No,
I'm the condom lady. Get it right.
Get it right. You know what? Even at my age, she still managed to make me blush. But I was thinking earlier, I went to look for some notes I was making when Dr. Borden was sort of giving us the outline for the program. And for those who are joining us, it's sex and safe and sex. Well, building healthy, intimate relationships. And one of the things that I'd written down was sex intimacy. Can it be sex and, I don't want to say necessarily contractual, but I was going to be as unappropriate as possible without it being all these things, or is it for it to be safe and otherwise? Then you need this. Are there boundaries? Are there labels? Is it 50 shades of orange?
Well, and that's going to depend on the person as well as on the relationship. And so I'd say you can't have sex without intimacy, and some people will say you can have intimacy without sex as well.
Okay.
So it's going to depend on how the person views it and their experience of it. Because a lot of times people, when they talk about intimacy, it will be things like hugging and other kinds of physical affection, but even just spending time together and getting to know each other can help to build intimacy within a relationship. Likewise, you can have sex and it is just going through the motions and, without a lot of feelings of connection there.
I think also to add to Dr. Bodden, I think a lot of not a lot, but some of our values, what we think of intimacy, sex, relationships, healthy relationships, is modeling healthy behavior and what that looks like, and kind of parenting. A lot of it can go back to parenting or your childhood and what you've witnessed, and that can also relate to domestic violence and power and control as well.
As Terry jumps in, as you said, I was thinking, if the children in the household see the parents hugging their kids and genuinely being affectionate, just like if they were to see them arguing, that modeling. So that behavior you set early for your household could translate into the children later on in their relationships, being, well, this is how mom and dad did it, this is how I guess it's done, whatever that is. Terry?
A very, very interesting thing I found many years ago. I was doing research on a paper I was writing about communication methodologies that are generational, that have a positive effect. And so I went to the American Psychological Association database and I put in communication methodologies generational, and I got almost 30,000 hits. There'd been almost 30,000 papers written about that subject. And I thought, great, there's a ton of information available. Then I added positive effects, 6. Almost 29,800 something were about what's going wrong. And so we're researching all the problems, not researching and publishing what works, what's healthy, what's good. It's no wonder the world's having trouble with relationships, because even us pros aren't really digging into the idea of what really works and what is good.
But is then that a reflection? I did a quick, and really maybe too quick, and certainly probably not the best. I've done it before a little bit better. Take media, and take media in North America, and take media in, say, Europe. And number of violent acts, shooting, gore in North America, much more prominent, prevalent, much more accepted. Nudity and the like, post-2000, was taboo. The flip side in Europe, it was the other way around. A violent act was, well, you knew to happen on the screen, but it wasn't as easily accessible. The question then, if that's the case, how we're seeing violence and nudity and then translate into relationships, the body is being portrayed as a bad thing in its natural form.
I also think that there is a link between how parents perceive how their experience with sex and their experience in their relationships with how they want to talk to their children about it. So if you've had negative experiences with sex, you're going to protect your child from having those negative experiences as well, and you're going to, whether it be that you wait to have those conversations until later, whether it be that you make it a much more taboo subject or a taboo act, or whether you have positive relationships and maybe are willing to talk to your child about how to safely engage in sex, and also talk about consent. And the other piece of that is that it can be a very gendered conversation when you're talking about sex. It really can be, whether you're talking to a female, whether you're talking to a male child. How are you engaging in those conversations? Are you talking about consent with your young boys? Are you talking about what that means to respect both male and female bodies? And are you talking to your children really about what both of those bodies look like, and rather than just their own body? I think it's also important parts of those conversations as your children grow up.
And I think the other aspect of gender too is just understanding the fact that these gendered conversations can very much lead to sort of the adherence to traditional gender roles, which then are a real hindrance when it comes to healthy sexuality. And that's the things that we need to we have a really hard time getting to that point, because of the fact that if we think about it, when it comes to sex, it's boys can't help themselves and boys will be boys, and and it's just like, when a man is aroused he can't stop and and whatnot, and then and that whole sort of thing about the masculinity that is seen to be sort of based on the number of sexual partners that you have and all those things. Then for girls and women, you're telling them about virtue and purity and all of that stuff. So it's like when you kind of put all those things together, it really can create a perfect storm for a truly unhealthy relationship, independently of whether or not there's abuse. But if there's that inequality and everything else on that's coming to the bedroom as well as every other aspect of your life, then it becomes really difficult to get to that point where it is that you're talking about mutual pleasure and intimacy and all of those things.
Now, with that, as we look at the whole notion of it, and intimacy seems to be a word we've used, but for some, do they go hand in hand, sex and intimacy? I mean, Dr. Boddy shared earlier, you can have only the other. For others, you can't. Where does that come in? Is it back to you, Terry, with relation to it being a gift, an act of service, in a sense? And I say that carefully that people don't misconstrue what I'm saying.
Right. Well, it depends on how we foundationally look at the whole concept of sex and why we're choosing to engage in sex. My understanding is there's really only 3 reasons human beings engage in sex. One is to have a child, one is to express love and intimacy, and one is just to have an incredibly good time. And I think we need to be able to talk with our partner about what's up. Why are we going to do this? Not that you got to talk for an hour and a half before foreplay, but just that you have an understanding where the other one's coming from, so you both can be freely engaged and that you know what you're doing and your partner and you are on the same page, so to speak.
But is there a fourth one, the commercialization of it for money? Is that part of why maybe it has become what it is, that it's no longer that intimate, special gift? It's now any commodity. And I'm not going back to the trade, I'm just talking about the normal power and barter and value that it has, even in the marital relationship.
Yeah, I think from the thing working with teenagers, what I see is they're used to watch series and everything in TV, and the relationships they see there is not a realistic relationship. It's not what they're going through in high school or in university. It's not how teenagers communicate. They see people acting and they think it's the reality because they don't have personal experience going through that. So they have a lot of questions of, I saw this on TV, but in real life they don't see similar things happening. So it's a struggle for them. And to add to what you're saying about intimacy and love, for teenagers it's also important to let them be able to have their boundaries. And in a young relationship, it doesn't need to show love through having sex with your partner, because sometimes it's a way of showing, your partner will say, if you love me, you do this, or if you love me, you do that. And it's not how it works for teenagers. They have to know their boundaries. They can always say no at any point in the relationship. They can go for a drink and then they can decide no. They can go home and then they can decide no, they don't want to have sex with the person. So it's very important to teach teenagers about saying no and being strong, and avoid peer pressure or relationship pressure for the boyfriend or the girlfriend to do something they're not ready to do it yet.
But to touch on your point about commercial sex work, and it's just like, it's the morality aspect that comes in when we're talking about sex. That then, when it's like sex is intrinsically linked when it comes to certain religious beliefs as to the value that you have or lack as a human being. When we talk about sort of Christian heritage and everything else, like we come from the false premise that the Immaculate Conception was immaculate because it was done without sex, when in reality it was because it was without sin. So from the get-go, we have this understanding that somehow sex is dirty and all these things that are kind of coming into it. So so it's depending on whether or not you're talking about, if there's a way in which a person can make a decision in which, they are using their body as a way to generate funds and whatnot, and whether or not there's a more moral component that is linked to that decision, because again, this is the way that we were raised, right? We see sex as something as having some type of moral indication or compass that is attached to it, but that's not necessarily the way that everyone sees the world. And and then and that's what leads to really difficult conversations then about that decision that you make or not. It's just like, well, if this is the way that what I choose to do with my body, then it's just like, who is anybody else to tell me otherwise, right? But we do have to take into account, of course, the fact that there's a lot of vulnerabilities that come when it comes to the aspect of commercial sex work, precisely because there's so much moral value that is attached to sex.
Well, and jumping from both those points is, the porn has become so much more pervasive as well and more available. And so that we're seeing a greater influence of as well. And so that will amplify both the messages that we get, what to expect, what women are supposed to look like in sex, what men are supposed to look like in sex. And of course, it's all done for money as well. So that's been a bigger influence, at least, that I've seen recently.
So there's a challenge then that, especially you're sharing, especially young people, but maybe even adults. We're not seeing healthy modeling, whether in the homes amongst cohabiting individuals, or whether on television, just in society. Ms. Mayor, how do we address that? How do we make it so that, respectfully, young people in particular, they're safe, they're healthy, they're making conscious, informed, consensual decisions, so that as they continue, they grow properly.
Communication is huge in any relationship, and I think the problem with sex is that people now are communicating about sex. They're not communicating about sex with necessarily the people they should be, but youth are communicating with each other about sex. They're communicating with their friends about who they're sleeping with, who they're having relationships with, and what's going on in their lives, not necessarily with their partners. And I think adults are doing the same. Adults, when they're going out with their friends, might be communicating if they're having pleasurable sex. They might be communicating if their relationships with sex is not as healthy. They might be communicating with their peers and their friends, but I think they're not. I think there is a disconnect in communicating with their partner, and I think that's a huge part, is having a conversation with your partner, as we spoke about before. And there's a big thing in a relationship about turning towards your partner, having those conversations with your partner, because that's who you're in the relationship with, and that's who's important in that conversation. Talking to them about consent, talking to them about what they want from that relationship. And as a young person, there are other people that you could also speak to about that in a healthy way, where you could get important information and appropriate information, whether it be a parent, whether it be a teacher, a responsible adult in your life that you could have a conversation with about sex, about healthy relationships. And I think that goes beyond, I think when you're talking about sex, particularly with a young person, it is beyond just sex. It's about how that affects your relationship with the person. It's about how it possibly affects your relationship with yourself as well, and how it affects your self-esteem. And I think that's definitely something that we have to tie in when we're talking about sex.
And the other elephant in the room, because, I love those, is the fact that we don't talk about masturbation. Like, you don't talk about what actually works for you, it's like what actually makes you feel good in terms of exploring your own body. So it's like, how do you expect then to be able to have those conversations with a partner if you don't even know what it feels like, if you don't even know what it is, and especially with women, and just like, and we talk about this, and if you go to any sort of, or actually now they're even portraying it in the movies, but any sort of, like sexuality workshop and everything else about, simple exercises like, do you know what you look like? Have you ever taken, a mirror and actually looked at what you look like when it comes to exploring your sexual organs and everything else? We don't talk about that. Like, I can guarantee you I will probably get 5 steps from your door over here, and somebody will come in and is like, did you really say to pull out a mirror and look at your vagina? Yes, I did. Why? Because it's important that we acknowledge the fact that there's so much shame that is attached to sort of our body parts and our knowing ourselves and whatnot. And it's just like, so how do you know it? Especially as a girl and as a woman, how do you know what you like to be able to express that to your partner? And to go back in terms of, talking about orgasms and everything else, When did it become okay for women to fake orgasms? When did it become okay for me to somehow make you as my partner, usually the male partner, that I have to worry about your feelings and whatnot, that I have to put on this huge performance for you just so that your ego is okay, as opposed to actually talking, letting you know whether this worked for me or it didn't.
Communication. Another word that I've heard then. So is it then, if I may ask, communication beforehand for that couple that's about to be married on their honeymoon, for that couple that's been dating, seeing each other, whatever the term is for, whatever that time is, that they think is appropriate, so that they have that communication before they engage in this next.
But a couple that's been married for 40 years and has never ever talked about this,
Mm.
and she has never said, actually, I don't really like that.
Yeah.
That ain't working for me. So
you're on the same page. Yeah. So communication. I mean, how do we then broach that? Because it's probably the only other thing that's more difficult to talk about is, people's incomes. You sit down and we're not talking about this with the married couple, the dating couple, the about to be married couple, the two strangers who've seen each other and said, I want to get to know you more. Ms. Maher?
I think I will go back to always, I think it starts from the family. If you can have that healthy relationship with your child about sex from a young age, they will know that it is something that is okay to speak about when they're ready to speak to a partner about it or a potential partner about it. So if you can have those conversations in an age-appropriate manner, have conversations with your child about sex in a family setting, one-on-one, and then they know they can come to you. I think for youth, that is the biggest thing that will help your communication.
Okay. So, start, Terry.
I was just reminded of an incredible anecdote about we adults have to remember when we're talking with children or teens that they are children and teens. We get into our adult mentality. The anecdote that's amazing is a young boy, 9 years old, comes home from school, sits down to have dinner with his parents, and at dinner he casually says, well, Mommy, Daddy, where'd I come from? And the mother and father look at each other like, oh my God, now we got to get in this whole thing. And so they spent over an hour taking turns trying to explain all these details to the boy. And at the end of it, the father says, now, son, do you understand where you came from? And the boy says, no, not really. My friend Pierre at school said he's from France, and I wondered where I come from. And it's like, we don't need to overreact to a kid's request, but find out what's the child really looking for. Instead of being this, I have such a font of knowledge, I will sit here and talk for an hour and a half about orgasm and masturbation and everything else, but all you want to do is what country you're born in.
Yeah.
And so we need to sometimes slow it down a little bit and realize it's not the worst thing in the world to talk about.
And move away from this notion of the one conversation. That's what I like about Talk Early, Talk Often so much. It's building blocks, right?
Yep.
And it's the same way that you tell them everything else in sort of small amounts so that they can grasp it. And it's just like moving away from this notion of the talk, the uncomfortable sitting down and going through it. Like that's a thing of the past. And it's just now it starts with giving them correct terminology as soon as they can talk. It starts with, just kind of teaching them boundaries, and you work your way all the way up so that by the time that they are thinking about possibly making that decision and whatnot, it's not going to be this whole like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? We've been talking about this since practically you could talk. So, in different ways. And
when you're talking about sex, I think you also have to talk about abuse and the potential for sexual abuse. And that's the biggest reason why when you talk to young kids about sex, you have to talk to them about what are their body parts called, what are they going through. Be able to have those conversations so your child knows that if something happens, they can talk to you, but also so that your child understands what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. And having those conversations from a very young age so that your child feels comfortable in understanding what's happening to them. And you really so that you can keep your child as safe as possible and your adults and yourselves as safe as possible, is really talking about consent, is the biggest part on that.
Consent.
Well, yeah, because I think that's a big thing, is that if you are going to have the discussions about sex, it's important to know that it's going to be a safe conversation within a relationship. And I think that's the hardest part, is that a lot of times what we're seeing, especially with young adults, is they're not understanding that a relationship is abusive, right? And in that case, there's not a balance of power, right? Domestic violence and intimate partner violence is characterized by an imbalance of power and control, with one partner using something to control the others, and sex can be one way of controlling them, in addition to a whole host of other emotional and other factors. And so I think that's why I think that's where the title for today came from, with safe and sex, is that it's important to have safe sex, but also to have a safe relationship where you can have conversations about sex, where you're going to have a partner who wants to know what pleases you and what you want. If something hurts, if you want to stop, if you're not comfortable with something, if you want to try something new. And so, so I think recognizing earlier, before it gets to that point, is even more helpful. Because when we did that survey at UCCI, what we found was that 70% of the people who responded actually identified controlling and abusive behaviors, but didn't recognize it as abuse. And so that really stood out to me. And so, it's good to talk about sex, but if you're in a relationship where it's not going to be safe to talk about it, then there might be some other conversations to be had as well.
And that doesn't change. Like, when you're married, those are still conversations you can have, and consent is still something to think about when you're married. Last year's gender 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence, which is the same theme this year. It's Generation Equality Stands Against Rape. And a big part of that is talking about marital rape as well, and how does that affect your relationship. And even when you're married, it's okay to say no.
Yeah. I mean, if you think even legally in terms of, it took until 1991 for them to overturn this somehow thought up idea that some dude had that, once you marry, there's perpetual consent. That was a common law principle it took until 1991 to be reversed. And it's just like, it's insane to me. Like, most of us, I think, in the room were alive in 1991. Like, that sounds like things that should be from, eons ago. But this idea that somehow because you're married, that, it's like what you want as an individual gets surpassed because, we're part of this institution and whatnot. And it's like, so this is something else that you have given up to me, in terms of that power dynamic.
Yeah. Even though it's illegal, it's still, from what I see at the crisis center, many women still don't know that's illegal. They think they are in a relationship, so that's what they need to do. And they don't see it even as a rape. If when they come there, we do the intake, and then they talk about what they've been through, and then we inform them that, you suffered, there was a rape, because you're allowed to say no at any point. As I said before, with the teenagers as well, knowing your boundaries. If you go for a drink, it doesn't mean you're going to have sex with this person. If you go out, it doesn't mean you have to do anything that you don't want to. If you kiss a person, doesn't mean you have to go further. You can stop at any point. And it's also in marriage or stable relationships. If you have a boyfriend for 3 years and he wants to do something, if you don't want to, you just have to be able to say no. If you're afraid of saying no, it's an abusive relationship.
Well, and I think there's consent, but there's also contraception as well, and knowing what's out there, what's available, and that it's okay to use it, and what works against pregnancy, what works against STDs. I think that can be a very confusing point. Some people think condoms protect against everything, but some transmit by just skin, and so it's important to have some knowledge of what to look for. I found a great article that outlines what to look for before you get involved with someone, and so that kind of information is really important as well. And that's stuff you can do on your own to empower yourself to have some idea of what to expect. Watch Carolina's videos of how to put on a condom, so you can make sure he does it right.
You okay, Sterling?
Hey, no, man.
So he's taking short, shallow breaths here.
No, it is. I think this is where having these discussions are important. And if someone is somewhere in a car by him or herself listening, this can put that person, whether it's the 40-year-old or the 14-year-old, to be informed, to be knowledgeable. But I was thinking, though, in today's world, the concern may be more than anything else, a disease, whether it's a disease that they can Dr. Paulson is no longer around, but they go and get 2 shots and get rid of, or is one that isn't. Is it then that before they even get to that point of that level of sexual activity, that they each get their papers? What's the phrase you use?
Get your papers?
Yeah. Well, how do you put that?
Make it sound like I need to go to immigration. Just be like, I need my papers.
Yeah. Go to a doctor, both you present. I mean, you had this discussion with us before.
Yeah. No, in terms of, we encourage testing as if you're sexually active and, getting your HIV and your STI screening and whatnot should be a regular part of your checkup as you would anything else. And I think it's one of those things that we ask people to speak to their partners about it, precisely because it's it's important for you to at least have that, first, it's a difficult conversation, yes, along with everything else, but it's important for your own health and also for you to take a precaution, because there is, amongst those of us who are sexuality educators, when it comes to the actual act of sex, the reason why we say that there's no such thing as safe sex but safer sex is because you can use condoms and other contraceptions to sort of reduce the risk of STIs or pregnancy and everything else, but it's never going to be 100%. So there is some aspect of risk that you decide to take on if you engage in the activity because you think that the rewards are going to be good. You hope that the rewards are going to be good. The rewards aren't always good, but sometimes you hope for them. but it's just like, whatever it is that you're looking at. But yes, but absolutely, we need to talk more about testing. The one thing in Cayman that has made us incredibly vulnerable, especially when it comes to HIV, is mandatory testing for certain sectors of our population. Because it's incredibly, the number of people, and I'm talking about grown people, who say, I don't need to have this conversation with my partner because they're here on a work permit. So it's like government vetted them, so they're okay. It's like, no, it's just like, because there's mandatory testing for certain sectors of the population, it somehow gives them this false sense of security that, then it becomes okay for me not to have to worry about it. And we have to take that ownership. And like I said before, we now offer with HSA free HIV and STI screening every Tuesday at the Red Cross from 9 till 1. So it really to make it accessible for anyone and everyone to take ownership of their sexual health.
It's so much. Terry?
I was just thinking my hope would be that it's part of the increasing intimacy in a relationship that some couple makes agreement to both get tested and share the results before they get sexually active. After, if you've already had sex 3 or 4 times and you go get tested and you both have a disease, that's a huge problem. Intimacy, trust, everything under the sun's going to go right down the tubes. And I think as a process of a growing relationship to make that part of getting to know my partner. And if I say, why don't we both get a test, and they recoil, I'm scared to death right there. Why are you afraid to get a test? Why don't you step out of the car? I'm like, I don't know what's going on here, and I'm not comfortable with that. And so, again, that it be a comfortable thing that no one's going to feel insulted or get upset, but say, yeah, good idea, let's go get tested.
So safe and sex, communication, intimacy, and the like. Now, I know, Ms. Carlene, you have another, I guess, your schedule is so taxing, so you're not going to be able to rejoin us after the break. No. Any final sort of other thoughts you may want to leave with us?
No, so many, Sterling, so many thoughts. But I think the most important ones, in terms of understanding what's out there for our community, we do this at the Red Cross as far as doing educational sessions on, HIV and STIs, as well as, condom use, gender and sexuality. And as I mentioned before, we do have the free HIV and STI clinic that we do in partnership with HSA. And, everything else that a lot of the other panelists here are going to be talking about. We think that somehow, because we know where the bits go, that sex is not something we need to learn about, but it really still is, so independently of our age group and whatnot. And it's not just about teaching others, but it's also for ourselves, because, sex can very much be a very integral part of one's sexuality and sexual expression and all of those things. So it's important for us to respect that and to talk about that. So I appreciate the opportunity. Lex, thank you so much for inviting me. I hope you don't get in trouble for the amount of times that I said the word orgasm, but we'll see. And it's just but again, this is a good place to start talking about those things, because we have to destigmatize the topic. We have to destigmatize condom use, because condom use is often seen as something that you're doing because you're doing something wrong, when in reality it's as a way to protect and empower people. Right. So thank you for that.
Well, when we come back from the news break, please rejoin us. It is our monthly Mental Health Matters. Stay tuned.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman.
It's only 2 species that we have, on the island.
Generations present.
Your voice, your choice. For today's biggest news.
Access to information.
Local, regional, international. This is headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom team.
Today's biggest news.
The water authority is continuing to make repairs after last week's earthquake, including some pipeline replacement work over the next few weeks. Tomorrow, from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., the authority is replacing pipes along Oak Mill Street, where the earthquake caused sinkholes. Customers that live on Oak Mill Street between Fairfax Way and Border Drive, as well as customers along Border Drive, Norbrook Street and Dallas Lane, Oakdale Close, Oakland Street and Fairfax Way will be without water service during this period. The Water Authority also wants people to know that there may be additional water interruptions or intermittent water over the next 2 days in the Windsor Park area. Good afternoon, I'm Dion Anglin with your headlines. In news elsewhere, the first event that will help decide the candidates for U.S. president is to take place with today's Iowa caucuses. Democratic and Republican voters will choose their preferred nominees for the White House race. While victory in Iowa doesn't guarantee anyone the nomination, it can help give them crucial momentum. And the Chinese government has accused the U.S. of causing panic in its response to the deadly coronavirus outbreak. It follows the U.S. decision to declare a public health emergency and deny entry to foreign nationals who had visited China in the past 2 weeks. There are more than 17,000 confirmed cases of the virus in China. Some 361 people have died there. That's a wrap of your headlines. I'm Dion Anglin.
Stay in touch with Radio Cayman for the latest in news and information.
Follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, www.radiocayman.gov.ky.
Radio Cayman, your voice, your choice, your radio.
Your favorite family fun day is back. The 53rd Annual Agriculture Show at the Stacey Watler Agricultural Pavilion in Lower Valley. Theme, Agriculture for the Future. Ash Wednesday, February 26th. Family fun for everyone. Acrobatic show, cooking competitions, produce, plants, pony rides, petting zoo, rodeo, and so much more. Gates open at 7 a.m. with ample parking. General admission is only $10. Children ages 2 through 11, $5. And under 2 are free. Or buy your raffle ticket including entrance fee for a chance to win $20,000 and so much more. For more information, visit them on Facebook or 345agriculture@gmail.com. Put down your iPad and get back to your roots at the 53rd Annual Agricultural Show, February 26th in Lower Valley.
Go Cocoa Nuts with Cocoa Fest at Pedro Castle on February 8th from 12 to 6 p.m. Indulge in all kinds of coconut things. Coconut-inspired food, treats, fresh coconut water, crafts, games, music, and more. Admission is only $5 and free for kids under 6. Proceeds from each entry fee benefit Meals on Wheels Cayman. So if you like coconut, come to Cocoa Fest at Pedro Castle, February 8th. For event details, check us out on Facebook. This ad is sponsored by Fidelity Bank. We're good for you.
2020 means perfect vision. And if you have your sights set on driving a new hybrid, then the time is now to check out the new RAV4 and CHR. Just 2 of the many hybrid models that Vamped is bringing to Cayman. Whether you're looking for a smoother and quieter way of driving or want a car that maximizes fuel efficiency while minimizing emissions, there are lots of ways a new hybrid from Vamped can make the difference in your life. Hybrids save fuel, run cleaner, reduce CO2 emissions, and even recharge their batteries without being plugged in. So focus your 2020 vision on a new hybrid from Vamped Motors, and we will see you through. Come to Vamped, home of the hybrid, located on Walkers Road.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back. Thanks so much for joining us. And it is our monthly Mental Health Matters. Safe and sex. Building healthy, intimate relationships. Dr. Alexandra Bodden, thank you so much for, as usual, putting together a wonderful panel. If you're rejoining us, Miss Carolina Ferreira had to return to one of her scheduled appointments, but so gracious that she was able to allow some of her time. From the Family Resource Centre, Miss Meher Lamda, thank you again for being part of our panel.
Thank you for having me.
And from the Tire Lounge, as part of the Crisis Centre, Miss Livia Sequeira.
Yes.
Almost there.
Sequeira.
Oh, that was good. Terry, flip a coin, man. And then Terry Delaney, together with Natalie Baldwin I really appreciate it, and I hope that my attempt at being pensive and listening intently isn't because I'm not engaged or that I'm being tentative. It's because I think this discussion is one that, as much as we try to joke and jest to make it light so people will not feel uncomfortable, it is a discussion that is serious and we need to be able to have. Now, as a parent, are we comfortable? Are we equipped to have that discussion with our children at whatever age? If we're, as Ms. Carlina shared earlier, if we've been married 25 or 50 years, are we having that discussion? What's the song says? Not as good, as I was once was what I was. You know how the song goes, Terry. You're not there yet. But, see, I'm trying to joke. Is that part of the challenge then, that we joke maybe about it too much and not serious to have that discussion about expectations and communications, intimacy and sexuality?
We often joke if we get nervous. It's a way of diffusing
Gee,
stress.
thanks a lot. That was obvious.
It's good to have the discussions, and it might start off with jokes. It's good to have casual conversation about it as well. As Carolina said, it's not going to be a one-time thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think also it's important to know that intimacy isn't just sex, right? I think when a lot of couples come to me, the men think I'm going to tell the women they got to get into bed more often. But really, that's not always where we start, right? So a lot of times men see intimacy as sex, and this is a gross overgeneralization, but a lot of times there's differences in perspectives, whereas women or one partner may want more emotional connection and more time. So ways of building intimacy is not always necessarily with sex or directly talking about sex. It is important, but also having other connections, spending time, doing things together are ways of bringing each other closer, which can make it easier to have those conversations, but then also can make the sex more meaningful, but also more enjoyable as well.
I think also one of the things, I know a big topic has been communication and talking relating to couples and healthy relationships. Well, if you look at a family, or a couple, I'm sorry, life gets in the way and you don't communicate. And so it's just the fact that there's a lack of communication, and then let's try to communicate, but then communicate about intimacy and sex and things that are awkward to even talk about with your partner if it's 25 years, 10 years, 6 months, because you're putting yourself out there. You're putting yourself in a vulnerable position that, as individuals, that's something that we don't like to put ourselves in. And so it's one of those things that you actually, I think it's important to communicate, but then also to think about it and to be able to take time for it. And that's where it can lack a lot.
I also think it's one of those conversations. We have a lot of conversations only when things are going wrong. We never have conversations when things are going right. And so it's never a conversation you want to have because you're only talking about it when things are going wrong and you have to talk about it. So if you have that conversation on a more regular basis, you have those conversations about when things are going right. Just generally in your relationship, things that you like about your relationship, and you're having those conversations with your partner, I think those conversations become easier to have.
But in the conversations then, as Mahira was sharing earlier, we don't have discussions prior. We have ongoing discussions. I think at some point, maybe in a new relationship, there was this societal norm or maybe an instruction from parents or friends, well, wait until after X time before you hold hands, before you kiss, before you whatever. But should that not only be the time, but the dialogue? Back to Carolina's point, well, I joked and said, get your papers, but each person, Terry, hey, let me make sure that you don't have any sickness, illness, and disease, and I'll present yours, so we exchange, just like we do exchange numbers. Is that where we should be, and how do we get there, if so?
Well, I think what we're doing right now is part of how we get there.
Mm-hmm.
When people in general get more comfortable talking about sex and begin able to talk about all the forms of intimacy in a relationship. When is it comfortable to hold my hand? We happen to be sitting next to each other. If at some point I'd reached over, put my hand on yours, I'm sure before long you'd get uncomfortable, like, what's this guy doing? We know each other professionally, and that's it. So there is a lot into that intimacy of touch. And we have to be cautious and sort out, who do you touch, when do you touch them? I'm a very huggy kind of guy, but I got to watch the reaction on a person, male or female, if they want to hug from me or not.
Right.
So we just need to tune in better to that and be more aware of it without feeling insulted. If somebody doesn't want to hug, that's their choice.
Well, that taps into a lot of the cultural aspects as well, because some cultures shake hands, some cultures hug, some cultures kiss. And so, so that's where it is. There's not any steadfast rules. You probably have your own personal preferences and comfort zones, but that's where paying attention to the person is important. Just because your last girlfriend or boyfriend was okay with that doesn't mean it's going to be okay with the next one.
Then what about that? And I had a discussion. I thought of a future program that I'll ask you to approach. But what about this whole issue of people? You meet someone. I mean, Terry, you just shared it, and you're seeing each other, literally. You figure, you engage in maybe you attend the same sports event, and you see each other often, and then over time there is an attraction. Maybe it's mutual, maybe it's just one towards the other. And over a period of time, maybe you've had drinks, maybe you've gone out to shoot a game of pool, you watch the movie, just socially, nothing else. And it's been 6 weeks or 6 months, and one thinks, well, she likes me, or she thinks I like him, and then they start to move forward. The holding of the hands and whichever. Is there a point where that chemistry becomes evident, but they never had any sort of other discussion other than, well, they're talking about the weather, they're talking about politics. You get where I'm trying to go, Ken?
I think I get where you're going, or at least what I'm thinking is that point you're talking about should be met with a simple request.
Ah, okay.
How often do I say, may I hold your hand? Can I give you a kiss? Whatever it might be. It sounds cold, but if you put it more into a romantic kind of thing, it can be the greatest thing in the world. If a woman says to me, or a man says to a woman, or a partner says to a partner, I'd really like to give you a kiss. It's so respectful because it's given them the right to say no. That's what's so huge in that.
Puts the power in them, right?
And it says, I feel that close to you now. I would like to hold your hand, or I'd like to put my arm around your shoulder, whatever it means. And it doesn't hurt to ask. People will do it and then stand there nervous as hell for 20 minutes. It's like, but no, before you put your hand on their shoulder, ask. It's not that tough.
What about confusion then? You've known someone, and it's not a working relationship, so to speak. So you see them often, and it seems mutual that the person is pleased to see you as you are to see the person. And then in that space of time, you somewhat be confused. Well, that interaction means more than what the other thinks it means, so to speak. Dr. Bodden?
Yeah, this is definitely something I discuss with clients a lot. Clients that find it hard to be able to go on a date, and other clients that have everyone hitting on them and making moves on them. And there's definitely a lot of confusion, and that's where asking can give you a chance to clarify what the expectations are and what the intentions are, especially if sometimes I get confused by situations that come in. The person they're interested in says one thing but then does something different, and they're like, I don't know what he or she wants. I'm like, I don't know either. And so that's where having those conversations can be helpful. So you know where you stand, but it also gives that person feedback as well. As to what signs or signals you were perceiving from them.
Yeah, I think we often assume, we have our expectations, we often assume the other person understands what you mean, like what you're saying. And it's hard, especially with teenagers as well. They don't have experience themselves, they have expectations from what it should be, from role model at home or from watching some series, and they both have they expect different things, and that's a mismatch often. Also with roles, gender roles, expectations as well. So a boy might expect something different than a girl, or from what they've been through in previous relationships or at home, what they experience. So expectations is a big thing to talk about.
The expectations. Sorry, Terry, if you want to.
No, I just want. I think that's a great point, a very important one. That we live with our own knowledge base and our own belief systems, and when somebody does or presents or even says something, we take on what they're saying based on our history, and we got to be able to clarify it. Do you mean this? Does that action mean you want to sleep with me tonight? Because if you take that one wrong, you're in big trouble. And it's a matter of just saying, let's take the communication to another level. Go deeper with it. That's great.
For some people, the answer is yes, but it's because the drive is so far home. I want to sleep, put a roof over my head, wake up and drive home. That's it. See, joke when you're nervous. Right. But expectations, emotions, experiences for that individual, whether it's the adolescent, whether it's that person who may not have had many relationships in the past, so isn't that experience with this journey. How then when you look at the expectations, the emotion, the experience, especially go back to the younger person and not being able to understand that thing they feel, maybe the infatuation, maybe the expectation that they should feel this thing since they acquainted with this person, and confusing it with, well, it means this and not this. Again, from the younger person's perspective.
Okay, well, I was just going to say, I think that's where the conversations are really helpful in helping them to understand the biological aspects of what's going on and the attraction that they're feeling. With a lot of my older clients, we expect to have those sparks and the fireworks every time, and that's not always the case either. So that's not always a sign of love, one. But two, just because that wears off, love does tend to change over time as well. And so do preferences, right? So people change and grow, and so do relationships. And so it's important to be able to be flexible and adaptable as you go on. That's awkward in this conversation. Willing to try new things and have ongoing conversations as people change. So I think that's important.
Ms. Natalie?
Yeah. I was just going to say regarding youth and what youth today and what I've experienced is this is a great topic, and I think we could probably talk about this for the next week, for 6 weeks, because it could go into so many different areas. But one of the big things is what youth perceive what love is and what trust is. And I think that's one of the things, oh yes, like Dr. Bond said, there are fireworks, there's love, but wait a second, they're going to have the side chick and we're going to have that, but that's what love is, and this is what intimacy is. And I think a lot of what's going on with the youth is giving them, like Livia said, the healthy boundaries, a safe place, but also in terms of communication, you have to figure out what you like and what you don't like, not just sexually, but what you want from a relationship, what you want out of love, out of trust and intimacy, what that looks like and what you want, so you can set those boundaries. Hey, I don't want you to touch my hand, or yeah, that's okay, you can touch my pinky, maybe. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're right.
So be able to know who you are, to be able to stand up for what you like and what you don't like. So.
But then it seems that as adults, perhaps not even as parents, or the modeling that we do, but in particular if we can communicate and have that discussion with our youth in our schools, in our homes, then they'll understand as they go through their relationships, through life, that they know what is safe, what is that they can share, what they should be expecting from that potential partner, and have that communication. Now, it sounds easier. I'm convinced there are people listening going, oh boy, I'm glad it's him and not us, because they're on nerve, and yet it's a conversation that should be as natural as we're thinking about, well, what's the next car we're going to buy, what are the specs in that car, safety features.
And the risk is worth the rewards. Would probably be, my answer to that is that, and it can be awkward, and they may not agree, they may not understand. So I'd say, if they don't understand, try explaining it a different way, with whether it's about sex or about when you take out the garbage, right?
Yeah.
So it's something we always talk about with communication, is that if you're not getting the response you're hoping for, try explaining it a different way, or if they're not getting it. Especially with differences in personalities and cultures, people understand things differently. So, so having the conversations, but, something that can be helpful, and I just want to slide this in here at the end, was, if couples are looking for ways of building intimacy, I think the love languages is a really great way of exploring that. And for even for the teenagers, understanding how they give and receive love can be helpful. Understanding that calling you 20 times while you're at a tennis match is not okay. That's controlling and abusive. But being able to identify how they share love and how they receive love, and being able to have the conversations with the person they're in a relationship with, or even just with friends.
So for that couple then, the 40-year, 25-year, 10-year, married or otherwise, and for the younger people, maybe they're single, maybe they're more casual, maybe they're, what they're hoping to be, the long-term relationship. Is it then that we should focus on those younger people to get them so that they understand the relationship and the expectations and the communication and the safety, and as Ms. Carlina shared, the joy that could be there, so that as they get to the older, 10-year, 25-year, 40 year married, that they now understand that, and then there's a whole new ethos as it affects relationships. Ms. Maher?
I think when you're changing mindsets, it's always a chicken and egg story. Who do you talk to first? You want to talk to the kids because they're the next generation, and that's how you're going to change the mindset in the future. But you have to talk to the parents about being able to talk to the kids and also changing it for now. And you want to make sure that you're not losing that, so that the kids are seeing the healthy modeling of relationships and all of that as well. So it really is, I think, a bit of a chicken and egg, and you have to work with the family. You can't forget that it is a family unit that it comes from.
Because once they're done talking to us, they're going home to the families. So if we can get the families on board, then it's going to be a more consistent message. And if the parents can learn to enjoy sex too, all the better. Then they'll begin to pass on those other messages.
I'm just going to quickly say the one thing, though, there is a need, like you mentioned with the young ones, to put some focus on there. But if we overdo our focus, we end up ignoring the other populations. So sometimes we can say, let's have a campaign with the young ones about drugs or alcohol or sex or whatever it might be. And then we're not doing any kind of campaign with middle age, older, or whatever. So it's like everybody needs this. We don't want adults saying, but that's for kids. Talk to the kids. I've been having sex for 30 years. You don't need to talk to me. Talk to their spouse and find out what the reality is, So I think focus is necessary. We need to watch it at the same time.
No, I was going to say, for teenagers and adults as well, I believe. In a relationship, you have individuals as well. So for teenagers, a relationship is not everything. Your partner is not everything in your life. You have your studies, you have your friends, you have other stuff as well. So as for young people, sometimes the relationship seems to be so important. And they lose themselves in a way, like they think their partner is everything. So it gives them less power to be able to say no, or to be able to say, if it's not working for me, I'm going to leave this relationship. Because sometimes they think the relationship is everything they have. So it's important for individuals, for teenagers, for adults as well, to have their own lives and their own hobbies and things that they like outside of the relationship. Being individuals is very important.
Yeah.
If I made an ask then, with that, for that individual, whether it's the teenager, the adolescent, whether it's that other individual, they met someone. And I won't ask about confusing infatuation with love and so on, but all of a sudden this new relationship, this new person in your life, the sun rises and sets with them, and you lose yourself in them. You disconnect from friends, consciously, sometimes unconsciously. Your activity change because you've fallen up. How do you get that person to enjoy the relationship without losing him or herself to that new partner, so that they still enjoy the things, they still study, still they go to the movies, they play the tennis, they do the football, whatever it is?
I always tell people that relationships should be 200%. It should be two whole people. And so with that, it's really important that they maintain their own identity, their own interests, and that time apart gives you something then to talk about and to share when you do come back together. A lot of times there's a lot of nervousness about spending time apart. It's going to look bad, or, what are they going to be doing? And so with that, if there is that trust and respect within the relationship, it should be okay to spend time apart. You should each be growing as a person as well as a couple in order to progress. I would say there's a lot of confusion with boundaries and that kind of stuff, especially if there is a history of sexual abuse. And so if someone has been through something like that, and there's a lot more than just the usual tension and awkwardness, if there's a history of trauma or PTSD related to past abuse, and that might be something you want to work on first. And that can be done through any of the agencies or the individuals represented here, or even Counseling Center, which is related to FRC. And you might want to do some work on that first to talk about it, kind of unpack what impact it had on you to get you to a place where you can have that conversation with someone. So I say that would be a bit of a different caveat. But anyone actually can come and have counseling, get some extra support on how to maintain your own interest and find out who you are, even if you've been in a relationship for a long time, or how to be yourself in a relationship, or how to deal with things from the past that are getting in the way of being able to have healthy relationships now.
Wow. And this is where I think these discussions every month, we get people to start to be able to, maybe at least individuals start to think and question and realize that if we want to improve, we got to work on ourselves. Okay, we're looking at the time as we go on the table. Prompts, Ms. Mayor, we started with you. Could we maybe ask you for some of your salient points, and then go around and then Dr. Borden. Would that be fine? All right.
Absolutely. I think the beauty of this table is that we're covering everybody, all age groups, anyone who needs any support in Cayman, talking about sex, talking about healthy relationships. You're covered around this table. So I'll talk briefly about what the Family Resource Center has to offer. First, I want to mention our program, Talk Early, Talk Often. It's a program we run regularly, so please follow us on Facebook. Our Facebook page is Family Resource Center, and you can get information regarding when the next one is coming up. But also, February is Valentine's Day. It's a month where we're all talking about healthy relationships, love, and hopefully celebrating your relationship. So I want to share that we're going to be holding a workshop about healthy relationships called Level Up Your Love for couples to talk about how to take your relationship just the next step forward. So again, follow us on Facebook and you can be up to date on when those programs come out. But I just want to say thank you to Lexi, thank you to Sterling, thank you for having me, and I'm glad that we can have these conversations and hopefully continue them.
And then, of course, Ms. Carolina Ferrer. Thank you. So, look, this is the most,
She has been rather quiet.
Yeah. Oh, man. But thank her for joining us early, and for those of you, she was here. But Ms. Livia?
So I'll give some information about the Crisis Center. Our website is cicc.ky. We have a walk-in place at Stella's Place, at Crown Square on Eastern Avenue. So if you have any issues, if you want to talk to someone in person, you can always go there and speak to one of our staff. You can also call our crisis line, which is 943-2422. So it's 24 hours line. You can call at any time when you speak to our staff. They can give you information or can just listen if you have any issues regarding your relationship. If you think you might be in an abusive relationship, you're not sure, you can call. You can call about other mental health issues. If you're not feeling well, we're going to give you some information and probably refer you to the counseling center if that's what you need. And also there's a Taya Lounge, so if you'd like more information about the Taya Lounge, you could email us taya@cicc.ky. So yes, so those are the main points of communication that you can have with the Crisis Center.
I just want to say thank you very much for having me. This has been excellent. I really like it. I know it has to continue for sure. And one point that really kind of exploded in my head is the reality that we have had a great conversation around this table. Now the obligation goes to everybody listening to this show to carry the conversation on within your family, with your friends, neighbors, whatever it might be. We need to lighten up the stigma. We need to get rid of the fear. We need to be able to say, hey, we happen to be sexual beings. We need to accept that and find the best light to put that in for us individually. So I hope this will continue in many ways.
I just want to say thank you as well. Thank you, Sterling and Dr. Bodden. I agree what Terry said. This has been a great conversation. I really have enjoyed being a part of it. But to keep the conversation going throughout your friend group, throughout individuals who you talk to, because, like I said earlier, I think it's important because you can be that one person to model the healthy behavior and to start that conversation. And you don't know where that can lead, how that can help someone. So thank you again.
All right, so thank you to everyone who came on today. If anyone is interested in counseling, free counseling services are offered through the Counseling Center. They've got walk-ins most days. You can give them a call at 9. Is it every day now?
Yes, every day.
Yeah, 949-8789. And February is also actually National Condom Week, so Carolina will appreciate that, and Teen Dating Violence Awareness as well, in addition to Valentine's. So thank you to everyone for listening. We will have lots of information up on the website, drbodden.com. Also, we're on Facebook and Instagram to get links to the page.
Well, thank you all very much. It's just really been remarkable that we've had this discussion, and as Terry shared, hopefully it's a conversation that we become more comfortable having within our families, amongst our friends, and talking to those with whom we're having a relationship, because those are the people that matter. Thank you all very, very much. Looking forward to next month's monthly Mental Health Matters. We'll pause and take a break, and when we come back, it'll be open line. So stay tuned for Talk Today.
Have you heard you can win a 7-night Caribbean cruise for 2 with the University College of the Cayman Islands.
What? No way. What are you talking about?
The UCCI alumni is giving you a chance to help them establish their charter by raffling off a cruise, and tickets are only $25.
What? That's awesome. Where do I get a ticket?
Tickets are available at the UCCI Administration Office, SRC Student Council, or any UCCI alum or board member. They're drawing the winner live on air March 4th.
Get your ticket today. Terms and conditions apply. For more information, visit ucci.edu.ky/raffle.
All are invited to attend the 83rd Annual Convention of the Church of God Full Gospel Hall, Georgetown, from February 2nd through to the 9th. Daily prayer meetings at 6:30 a.m., preaching and praise at 10:30 a.m., and evangelistic services nightly at 7:15. Sundays begin with Sunday school at 9:45 a.m., followed by morning worship at 10:45, a youth service at 3 p.m., and evangelistic services at 7:15. Come and enjoy a warm Christian fellowship, praying, praising, and singing with church family at the 83rd Annual Convention of the Church of God Full Gospel Hall, Georgetown, on the waterfront from the 2nd to 9th of February. Free meals served daily and transportation is available by calling 926-8180.
Headlines.
With the latest headlines.
Headlines.
One of Cayman's bright and shining young stars.
Local, regional, international.
Headlines.
Turning to international news. Updates on the hour between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. on weekdays. All the news when you want it. Tune in to Radio Cayman for hourly headlines of the day's top stories.
Radio Cayman, your voice, your choice, your radio.
Would you like free roses this Valentine's Day? Buy a gift that can be cherished forever from Island Jewelers. And the roses are on us today. That's right. We'll buy the roses. Spend $350 US at any Island Jewelers and receive half dozen red roses from celebrations for free. Island Jewelers is located in the Island Plaza under Margaritaville, Camana Bay, the airport, Kimpton Seafire, and Ritz-Carlton. Show her you love her today, forever, and always with Island Jewelers.
The 2020 Cayman Arts Festival is here. This year's event launches with Latvian artists Christine and Margarita Belenis, critically acclaimed soloists in the vanguard of classical music with mesmerizing stage presence. Thursday, February 13th, 7 p.m. at the Agape Family Worship Center. Tickets are $40 for adults and $15 for students. Tickets are available at www.caymanartsfestival.com. For more information, call 922-5550 or email inquiries@caymanartsfestival.com. Event sponsored by RBC Dominion Securities and RBC Private Banking.
At Seaboard Marine, customers often ask us questions about their shipments.
Hi, I'm thinking of buying a car from the States. Which port do you ship out of?
Hi, we ship out of Miami, Houston, and Brooklyn. Just let us know your port of choice and we can provide you with a quotation and answer any questions you may have on insuring and protecting your vehicle during its journey.
Shipping shore to shore,
ValueMed Pharmacy is your community care partner for health and wellness needs. We offer convenient prescription processing at the counter and online at value-medpharmacy.com. That's VALU-medpharmacy.com. With pickup available at the Walkers Road or Boddentown location. We also accept transfer prescriptions from other pharmacies. More than just a pharmacy, shop ValueMed for personal care and beauty products from trusted brands, perfume and gift sets, Hallmark and greeting cards, baby clothes, footwear, handbags, swimwear, home decor, toys, school supplies, and stationery. And home convalescence aids like wheelchairs, walkers, crutches, canes, and hospital beds. With 2 locations to serve you, Walkers Road in Georgetown and in Evron Plaza, Boddentown. Visit ValueMed, more than just a pharmacy.
If your business is over here, but your customers are over here, adding more yellow to your business will bring you both right here. With everyone searching yellows, print, online, and mobile app, getting your business noticed is easier than ever. Book your consultation today at findyellow.com.
But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back. Thank you again for joining us, and really, very, very grateful to Dr. Alexandra Borden. Not just, her intellect and experience, but the graciousness, the absolute willingness to help us on a monthly basis. I'd say facilitate, but I tell you what, coordinate, produce, and just make it happen. Our monthly mental health matters, and there's a panel of professionals that she assembles every month. It's been phenomenal. Well, there's some open line, and we want you to call and share your thoughts with us. I trust that our last discussion was informative. Trust that it did not in any way offend your sensibilities. Hopefully it was as we intended, to be able to get us to a point, whether we've been married 40 years or whether we've been only married 4 months, maybe we were just in a new dating relationship, potentially as teenagers or young people. Maybe we're recently divorced, or that young professional who is now starting a career. If there's a way that you can be safe, healthy, intimate, very nurturing, and I would say nourishing, perhaps, relationship, that's the way it should be. To recognize not just what you think or should know as an obvious sign of abuse, but otherwise the things that could be construed, and probably is. But at the end of the day, it's about being able to, as I think Terry Delaney shared, recognize that it's a great gift of service, and it's a very, very, I think, intimate part of having relationships be safe as well. So 949-837, 1-800-534-8255. It's open line. And be honest with you, it has been since Tuesday. It's still been challenging for many of us. Many of us have signed on to, apps and websites and, links and messages and notifications and all the things for different weather alerts. Some of us that had in the past, perhaps were getting notifications and may have disengaged, have now become even more sort of in tune. Now, could be a good thing, and not a psychologist, sociologist, or any sort of healthcare worker. I would only share that yes, it's good to be informed and engaged and involved, but respectfully, be very mindful that you don't become overwhelmed with wanting to know, well, was there a tremor? So you check your app, so that it paralyzes you and it creates in you this sense of great fear, and you're not able to enjoy it. If you're finding yourself like that, if you know a friend, co-worker, maybe it would be very healthy and safe and prudent to speak to a healthcare professional. It can be traumatic. I would probably venture to say that individuals as well as organizations, whether they're employers, employee associations, or otherwise, who may have engaged the worker professionals to come in to talk to their staff, to their families, even to themselves, to say, hey, let's recognize what happened, and let's appreciate that it could have been, very, very difficult for you, very traumatic. So let's make sure that you are now positioned to respond appropriately, and you feel going forward that you can do so in a healthy way. Now, doesn't mean that you don't ignore anything else going forward, and you don't put in place things that you say, I wish I had, maybe just like I do for a hurricane, maybe keep that barrel of water stored. Maybe I can do this to make sure that if this happens, this would be easier. Do as you can and do it safely and properly. 949-837, 1-800-534-8255. Well, let's have a conversation about anything and everything that you want to. The other thing is, just the notion that some have now heard as a qualifier, as sort of an adjective, novel coronavirus. And I thought, well, why is it being discussed in that sense? And what does that mean? And then how is that going to affect some of us? For some, it's just the same old same. We are very prudent. We are very, very sort of respectable in relation to how we go about our personal hygiene. Maybe we will just step it up. For others, it's a recognition that, don't always wash our hands as often as we can or in a proper manner. Perhaps for some we may put off certain travel that we're thinking of. Perhaps we may not eat certain things, or maybe we may not eat certain things from certain places, whatever the case. I can share that in the last few days, the number of videos from seemingly healthcare sort of related information from people who genuinely believe that the information is helpful. Now, if I've taken a few hours to see it, and I believe that I don't necessarily look at that thing as exhaustively as some, I can imagine others may have done likewise. Again, what can we do in partnership with our healthcare agencies? What can we do in our own lives to make sure that we are, again, as safe as we can? Now, some would be very quick to say, not worry, the governments of the day have things in check and we can be safe and trusting in the information and the action. Others would be, not so. And they would say, if they're saying it, whoever they are, whether it's some sort of World Health entity, whether it's a large industrialized nation and talking about their healthcare agency, or whether it may be our own. Some would be very distrustful just because that information is coming from that particular resource. Now, is that a responsible thing to do? Is it appropriate? Is it based on past experiences? Well, I want to hear from you. So whether you want to talk about all those things, it could be. Some have found it apt. Let's look at some of the jokes to sort of lighten the mood. We've all seen the one where the airline is sort of pulling into the airport and it has a large surgical mask placed over the nose. Others have seen other attempts at trying to make a more sort of jovial approach to it and perhaps put people for at least a quick second a little less on edge. Well, those are things we can discuss, but some have shared with me. We've gone through the first month of this new decade, and already so much, not just locally, not just regionally, but globally, so much has transpired. What does that mean? Is it, as someone shared, that it's now time for individuals to start to look at the individual's impact on our world? Is it for governments to be more conscious with respect to what we're doing in our world in relation to food security, being able to feed the people on the planet, in relation to the potential impact we may have in relative to the air quality, to the way we developed our lands and the like? It may be that we're positioning the world as it is in such a state that the pressures of us as people on the planet and its resources is so much. As one fellow shared, and I think I got his analogy correct. He said all of a sudden you're crowding a lot of people onto a trampoline, and more and more and more there's on there, less and less space remains, and the more the trampoline goes to the ground, and then eventually the springs will give out and it'll all fall through. Now, the first few, could probably bounce, increasingly, it may be a nice fun way to bounce collectively, but at some point, there'll be no more give left in the trampoline, and it'll just break apart. Is that what we're doing with the strains and the stresses that we're putting on our planet? And if so, is there a way that we can sort of reduce our impact? Do we demand less of certain things? Are we able to maybe consume less of certain things and not be as wasteful as we are? Well, not necessarily that is something that some of us think about consistently and constantly, but thankfully there are those of us, not just, thankfully the people who perhaps are employed in governments and international agencies and NGOs, perhaps in universities as part of their studies, of what can we do to make sure we talk about the carbon footprint, that is reduced, or to make sure that as we use resources we are wasting less and less, so that, take for instance, we sit down to eat a meal Is there food left in our plate? Is that food something that we could save to eat later? Or are we, and I say this respectfully, not really that concerned, it's only scraps, so we just toss it into the garbage? Well, can it be combined and safely used to maybe feed our pets? No, even to that. But is it that we could look at it and say, okay, this little bit of rice or this little bit of vegetable or whatever it is, that we could save it and safely store it and reuse it? Perhaps we don't want it that way again for whatever reason, but could we, as we saw our parents and grandparents, perhaps out of necessity had to do. So the leftover little bits became some sort of soup. Again, you might think, well, you have the affluence, and thankfully many of us do. But is that sign of affluence, really the measure of our responsibilities, measure of our respectfulness, and the measure of the sort of worth that we should have, and what is, in essence, finite resources? Well, give us a shout. Share your thoughts with us. 949-8037, 1-800-534-8255. We invite you to also share your thoughts on our WhatsApp, 925-3261. Now, I'll share with you, with their permission, discussion. And as the fellow was saying to me earlier, he says it's unfortunate that sometimes when people say something that they truly mean, it's only after maybe they've had, something to, what they say, loose lips sink ships, or some way have interpreted, drunken minds reveal what sober minds conceal. It's only after they've got to that level of courage, or after they've become, perhaps emotionally charged following something happening, or they were offended by someone's comment. So there's three individuals who I'm very grateful for the opportunities to speak to people like this. Presumably, they were having discussions with some of their colleagues. The impression that I'm left with, these are people like us who live and work here, who vote, who may, like some of us, have limited access to some of the policymakers and politicians and the other influencers, or like some of us may have, seemingly perhaps unequal access, unfeathered almost, and who perhaps can not just influence certain things, but feel as if they are able to, if the people so inclined, to help to navigate and bring about certain outcomes. And the three sort of in unison shared that there's a growing arrogance on a part of people in position of authority. They were sharing a few things from sort of the global platform with respect to people who are in positions of great sort of authority, for want of a better word. And thankfully, some say that at some point you see them before the courts being charged with embezzlement or some sort of other financial crime or the like, or you see them in courts because of their behaviors. People say, well, you've broken a contract, you've gone back on your word, and you've now caused us a loss of some sort. Or you see them in courts because they would believe that because of their position they can act or demand certain sort of things from others, and you see them before the courts for, well, maybe sexual misconduct and the like. Or sometimes, if we look more closely, and this is where I think one of the fellows shared, it's unfortunate that we don't look at people in higher positions, world leaders, business executives, people in the judiciary, other individuals who may, because of their position of significant influence and have significant authority over the outcomes of certain things, we give them almost a unfettered license to misbehave, because who's going to question them? There are very few people above them to whom they are accountable. But if we question them, if we hold them to account, then that not only is going to look bad on that individual, but presumably on that institution, whether it's the body of people who are appointed to oversee some as some sort of regulatory function, or whether there's some sort of, arbitrary or arbitration tribunal. Now, he said that instead of it being an arbitrary approach, it should be that there's a societal norm. The higher up you go the ladder, don't fail to forget that the more you become visible. Yeah, some would say the higher the monkey climbs a tree, the more exposed it is. But because you're so visible, then the greater the expectation on you, because you hold this significant position, to now be an exemplary individual, as opposed to what they seem to have, shared as a consensus. Those individuals now take it upon themselves. Well, I'm the be all and the end all. And as I listened, it was evident that I think it's something that more and more of us are sort of reflecting on and sharing grave concern, and that we are quick to look at our politicians in particular and sanction them. If nothing else, just publicly, humiliate or at least draw attention to their indiscretions. But what about the individual who may be the chairman of some large multinational, or who may be the chairman of some tribunal or otherwise, or who may be the head of some other large, presumably reputable entity? What are we doing to make sure those individuals are, without question, exemplary in their conduct, their personal as well as their professional and public lives? Now, one shared that if the person is, say, the president of a large, conglomerate, or is the senior member of some organization, that what that person does privately should have no bearing on the person's perception publicly. But how do you separate the two, especially in the world in which we live, where it is evident that many times things, whether maliciously and deliberately, can become very public? It isn't that what consenting adults do behind closed doors. It is about the behaviors and the behaviors of people in their private sort of setting, and their comments, and how that may be perceived publicly on the way they may make decisions, the way they may exert their influence, the way they may, without even truly recognizing it, be set as an example to others. Well, if John can do this, and look at who John is, well, why can't little Timmy expect that this is the new norm? Well, give us a thought. Share your thoughts with us. 949-8037. 1-800-534-8255. Likewise, you can perhaps weigh in on our WhatsApp, 925-3261, and be a part of it. It's been almost a week, but since there have been a number of reported aftershocks, there are still some people who are assessing their properties, and thankfully there hasn't been as yet any significant sort of damage reported. It has been, if you want to say, unfortunate that some of our roads have experienced sinkholes. It would appear, and for this I think we have again to look to our public and to see how not only responsible and cognizant, but how diligent we can be. We've seen the sinkholes, we've reported them to the appropriate authorities, and we've taken necessary precautions to avoid the areas, to navigate the areas if we have to, as safely as possible. Now, without sounding any alarms, without certainly trying to cause people to be unduly frightened, but just be careful, because who knows, could that get wider, not just following other aftershocks, but just the behaviors. But what about things that we don't know about just yet? Maybe a quick call, Miss Susan, before we go to the news break. Hey, good afternoon and welcome. You're on Talk Today.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you today?
Not bad. I just want to find out. It's a Filipino here that's on work permit.
Just one?
A Filipino here on a work permit.
Uh-huh.
And the Jamaican fella is on a work permit.
Mm-hmm.
and he got on dry dock for 9 months. You know what that means?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, sir.
But now when that baby born, what nationality that can be?
Interesting, huh? What do you think we should do then with our immigration laws then? Because there are those who would say, if you're born here, you should be of here. But in that instance, what happens?
No, it shouldn't matter. If it to them here on work permit, it shouldn't born here. She should be gone. She should be gone back and have it in our own country.
Okay. Now, what about the instance? Are we doing this for everybody? So instead of it being a Jamaican or Filipino, what it was, if it was someone from England and Canada or the US and some part of Europe, or if there were other, let's just limit it to the G8 nations, would it be the same rules apply across the board, or depending on where they work and who they work for and how much money they're making?
It shouldn't be.
Okay.
If you are on a work permit and he's on a work permit, that baby shouldn't born here to get Cayman status or anything.
Mm-hmm.
It should be. That's how it's supposed to be. The law.
Mm-hmm. Well, these are, I think, you raise a point that I think increasingly we need to look at with respect to our immigration, and how do we make sure that we're not only respectful and looking at things from the family perspective, but as we grow. Now, a question not just to you, but to all of us. That couple, they've been here for X time. The child born here and grows here, schools here, and this is the only home that child knows. Is that child, or should that child be considered a Caymanian? Just because the child is of two, parents who are not from here, who are on a permit. Interesting things. Appreciate the sentiments, sir. And it is open line. Now, Miss Susan, do we hit the opportunity for another call before the news? Hey, good afternoon. Welcome. Thank you for calling.
Good evening, Brother Dwayne. How are you?
My friend, I'm very blessed, very thankful. I must say, very pensive, though, I must say.
Yeah,
and yourself?
You're a young man. You can handle anything, man.
Well, I tell you what. I believe that God does not give you more than you can bear, and He knows your strength. And if you just draw on that faith, you'll be amazed at how strong you are, even though you don't realize it.
Brother Dwayne, let me take you a little good advice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know these things. Let me tell you something. Don't worry for nothing. God is in charge of everything, and I want to say this. When you started the conversation, and I'll call about that, but
yes, sir.
When you started that conversation, let me say something, Brother Sterling.
Yes, sir.
Whatever man trying to do, they can only do until God say that's enough. So God can stop everybody. And what happened to us last week, Tuesday, I hope that those that never believe that there is a God Almighty, I hope they open their eyes. Now, I don't want to say no more about it than that.
Yes, sir.
But God is good, and I know what about anything. Brother Sterling, what I call about today, I see some rocks pile up the airport.
Uh-huh.
And I understand it is the best in the world, the Canadian rocks that they're going to extend the runway with. That's what I'm hearing.
That's what we hear, yeah.
So I want to say this morning that poor Cayman, we have the strongest rocks. That airport that is currently there, that runway, I guess that must have been there for many years, because I was a little boy when they were building that. And I don't hear no complaints about the runway cracking up or breaking up. And that's Cayman Rock. And as far as I know, I can be corrected, but I understand that Cayman got the strongest rock there is in the world. We got Playa del Mar, but then we got some rocks they call cliff rocks. And we got other kind of rocks that were hard. And all of these years that the Caymanian people, the old Caymanians, were building roads and everything else, they not imported no rocks. And I also understand that it's a Canadian company that is going to do the work, so they got to bring in their rocks because they can't work with Cayman rocks. Can you clarify that for me, sir?
I can try. We heard some of the things that you've heard, as you shared. We understand that because of the nature of filling the I call it a pond, maybe there's another word for it, that they need to make sure safety is of obvious paramount concern, and then these routes are what are required. But your question should not necessarily go unanswered. So let's see what we can find out for you.
So, Brother Sterling,
yes, sir.
I thought that they was going to extend the runway in the eastern area, in the north, somewhere there in the seaside, because real and truly that area, I remember that time when Cayman Airways, that Saturday night when Cayman Airways had ran off there. Because I remember I was a police officer that night when that happened. And that water right there to the edge of the runway is very shallow. They could fill that in because remember now that got solid rock there too, although the water is, but that is very shallow there, and they can get some Cayman rocks and they can fill that in and extend the runway there, because by filling the pond area, I don't know what that's going to do with the planes, because they just constructed a new brand road there. Or what are they going to do then? We used to this, just put them down this weekend. Oh, it didn't work, so we dig them up next week.
Yes, sir. Well, you know what? Appreciate it. Maybe we can talk about that after the break. But thank you, sir, because I'm sure your questions aren't, the only ones that people are asking. Now, as we go to the news break, perhaps, if he doesn't mind, just remember Kevin Rivers on the back and wish him happy birthday. Hey, listen, man, if you're celebrating, we want you to be happy and healthy and enjoy it. All right, let's go to the news. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman.
It's only 2 species that we have here on Iowa.
Your voice, your choice. For today's biggest news.
Access.
Local, regional, international. This is headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom team. Today's biggest news.
The water authority is continuing to make repairs after last week's earthquake, including some pipeline replacement work over the next few weeks. Tomorrow, from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., the authority is replacing pipes along Oak Mill Street, where the earthquake caused sinkholes. Customers that live on Oak Mill Street between Fairfax Way and Border Drive, as well as customers along Border Drive, Norbrook Street and Dallas Lane, Oakdale Close, Oakland Street and Fairfax Way will be without water service during this period. The Water Authority also wants people to know that there may be additional water interruptions or intermittent water over the next 2 days in the Windsor Park area. Good afternoon, I'm Dion Anglin with your headlines. In news elsewhere, the first event that will help decide the candidates for U.S. president is to take place with today's Iowa caucuses. Democratic and Republican voters will choose their preferred nominees for the White House race. While victory in Iowa doesn't guarantee anyone the nomination, it can help give them crucial momentum. And the Chinese government has accused the U.S. of causing panic in its response to the deadly coronavirus outbreak. It follows the U.S. decision to declare a public health emergency and deny entry to foreign nationals who had visited China in the past 2 weeks. There are more than 17,000 confirmed cases of the virus in China. Some 361 people have died there. That's a wrap of your headlines. I'm Dion Anglin.
Stay in touch with Radio Cayman for the latest in news and information.
Follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, www.radiocayman.gov.ky.
Radio Cayman, your voice, your choice, your radio.
Have you heard you could win a 7-night Caribbean cruise for 2 with the University College of the Cayman Islands?
What? No way. What are you talking about?
The UCCI alumni is giving you a chance to help them establish their charter by raffling off a cruise, and tickets are only $25.
What? That's awesome. Where do I get a ticket?
Tickets are available at the UCCI Administration Office, SRC Student Council, or any UCCI alum or board member. They're drawing the winner live on air March 4th.
Get your ticket today. Terms and conditions apply. For more information, visit ucci.edu.ky/raffle.
We need to talk. Okay. We've noticed you've been going to KFC a lot more than usual lately. And
that's fine. We know you love it.
We just don't understand how you can afford it.
The KFC What a Deal menu, starting at just $3.50, gives you lots of great choices and value. Available at KFC Baytown Plaza, Shedden Road, and in the Strand. The KFC What a Deal value menu, the deal everyone should know about. Come to KFC and enjoy a variety of tasty choices at surprising prices. KFC, so good.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. And it's great to see your public aware. Great to see your public willing to ask questions. Now, is it that our people who are in position of authority receptive of the questions? Not only are we asking questions in a civilized way and hopefully not necessarily vitriolic. Now, if you look at the other side of the coin and you're in the position of authority, will you always think, well, man, why are they picking on me? Why are they asking these things? Just let me get on with it. Or is it that you should expect, wait a minute, you're now in a position of authority, you need to be accountable, you need to be responsible. Let's go to the phones. Good afternoon, thanks for calling.
Yeah, good afternoon, Dwayne.
How are you, my friend? How are you? Did you have a good weekend?
Yeah, man.
All right, good to hear that, man. But thanks for calling.
Yeah, you're welcome. Concerning that coronavirus, seems as though they don't have a cure for that. And the people who are catching that are dying very fast.
Yeah, it is unnerving, to say the least, huh?
Yes, and for years now, Mr. Kenneth Christian, our herbal doctor, he has made it known for quite a while now that he has cured people with cancer, AIDS, diabetes, and it seems as though the government are not willing to work with him.
If I can ask you, and just generally speaking, and if there isn't any other caller line, and if you're willing to engage for a second, would that be okay?
Yes.
All right. Now, hopefully, this is not irresponsible of me, so I apologize. I believe, this is just my personal belief, that we have natural things, whether we want to say the remedies that our parents and grandparents, the bush stuff that we can use. I believe that those are things there that can be very beneficial. I believe, from what I gather from scientists and others, that these are some of the things that they now have found and taken and manufactured and found a synthetic way to put them into medicines and medications and the like to treat people. But with that in mind, do you think then that we need to be, one, very, very careful to ensure, like medicine, that bush tea, whether it's the Sarah seed that we all would drink and like and say is bitter but believe is good, or whether it's something else, that we don't misuse it in a certain way or overuse it, just like we would the aspirin, that we don't take too much of it and that it affects us, and just like the medicine from the pharmacist, that we measure it properly for the age and stage of the person. Is that, do you think, necessary and prudent thing to do with the bush medicine, if I can just use it in that way?
Well, bush medicine has been around from a long time, Dwayne.
I agree with you. Yes.
Before pharmacies.
Right. Those were our pharmacists, right? Ancient generations and civilizations. I'm with you.
Yes, and they healed people. They never just made them feel better for a while.
Right.
And then, as we know, the drugs that the pharmacy gives you, it's good for one thing, but bad for something else in your body.
Potentially a lot of side effects, right?
My great-grandfather, Azariah, my grandfather Ackerman's daddy was from St. Elizabeth, Jamaica. And when he was here in Cayman, he healed a lot of people with herbal medicine. And it's a known fact that a young marijuana tree without THC in it, if you boil it and you drink it as a tea, it cures asthma. And that fact has been known for a while. And why is it that government continues to give asthma patients the asthma pump instead of giving them permission to get the marijuana tea, which will heal them? Because if a person who has asthma has an asthma attack and they're in an area and they do not have an asthma pump, that person could die. So instead of putting people in that type of situation, it's better for them to get the medication that can heal them. And with this, the seriousness of this coronavirus, which is killing people very fast, faster than cancer, faster than AIDS, faster than diabetes. And if that reaches the Cayman Islands, I'm hoping before it does reach Cayman Islands that the government will take Mr. Kenneth Christian serious in what he's saying.
But then, if I may ask then, and I don't want to single him out or anything, but if there was a cure or something that could treat effectively, whether it's as a herbal treatment that we know or otherwise, especially in our populace, do you think it would be incumbent or the responsible thing to do for that to be made available so that it could treat the populace?
Of course. And the importance of it, Dwayne, is that whatever plant that Mr. Christian is using in order to make this medication, government should see to it that it's not being destroyed, that it will go in extinction.
Right. Now, if I could ask you then two other things. The notion that, again, our plants, our bushes, I say that because some would appreciate that we look at that in a very, very disrespectful way. We're clearing a property and that old weed, we just, rip it up and get rid of it because we don't know what it is and we don't think it has any value. Do you think then to date, up until this point, as a society, we have been unwilling to look at the properties of these things that our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents used to use? They were in the backyard. And now we just mow them down and rip them up. So would it be helpful if we were able to tap into some of that, let's say that ancient knowledge, that traditional knowledge, and say, this thing was good for the stomach. This thing, when used in this way would help with this skin condition or this other thing. Do you think we've gone too far now? We've lost a lot of those things?
Well, Mr. Kenneth Christian would be one of the best people right now to ask that question to. But I can tell you one thing, Dwayne. Being sick, being unhealthy, and dying, and feeling your life leaving your body is not nice.
I can imagine, yeah, that's that awful feeling, I imagine.
And it's very unfair for the government to continue to refuse working with Mr. Kenneth Christian and letting him show them that what he's saying is true, that he's able to heal people. Especially at this time that we have this serious disease in the world, coronavirus, that is killing people very fast.
But then, let me then ask then two things. One supplementary, and then the second question I was going to ask about travel. The supplementary being that as a smallish society in terms of the physical, geographical size of our country and then the relatively small size of our population. I mean, large universities have more people and some companies have more employees, right? Do you think there are things we can do to make us healthier, more active, less stressed? Should that, you think, become part of the national agenda so that we got little places where we can safely exercise, or more places, and then as a people that we're eating healthier? Or is it that we're on this, mad dash and everybody's consuming everything in a quick way, convenient, without taking time to enjoy and savor the flavor of our foods? Is there something that we could do to make us, as a people, more healthy?
Well, Dwayne, they have made studies concerning plants, and they say that people who work in offices and they have plants inside their offices,
the clean air. Mm-hmm.
They have made studies that those people are a lot less stressful than people who work in offices without plants. So plants have a lot to do with your health.
Yeah.
And I think it's because plants also have a lot to do with your oxygen.
Right. Yeah, man. Hey, appreciate what you shared. Always, enjoy your contributions. Respectfully, though. Quick final break. Apologies to Miss Susan. We're like 3 minutes and 48 seconds beyond the break time. All right, I'm going to pause to take a break. When we come back, the question was travel. Now, we know the government has made some comments, but should we as people, if we can, avoid and limit travel to areas where, secondly, if we travel, so maybe there's a co-worker, who travels somewhere, who met someone who travels somewhere, and all of a sudden, what do we do, if anything? And then if we are back in Cayman, for instance, what do we do? Do we quarantine? Do we self-quarantine? And to what extent? Not saying become alarmists, not saying that we become imprisoned, but again, safety concerns and considerations, the hand washing and the like and other things. Any thoughts on any of those? Well, I invite you to call and share your thoughts. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Your Radio Cayman 6 p.m. news, Monday through Friday, is brought to you by Logic. Your life connected.
Would you like free roses this Valentine's Day? Buy a gift that can be cherished forever from Island Jewelers. And the roses are on us today. That's right. We'll buy the roses. Spend $350 US at any Island Jewelers and receive half dozen red roses from Celebrations for free. Island Jewelers is located in the Island Plaza under Margaritaville, Camana Bay, the airport, Kimpton Seafire, and Ritz-Carlton. Show her you love her today, forever, and always with Island Jewelers.
Radio Cayman, maintaining the innovation.
On a daily basis, making it easy to connect with you, our listeners. Add us to WhatsApp today, 925-3261. That's 925-3261.
Radio Cayman.
Send a text or voice note.
Can I send a request, please?
You don't really have to ask us. Just send a request.
This is a shout out to my ex.
Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands.
Radio Cayman, maintaining the innovation.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back to Talk Today. 949-8037 or 1-800-534-8255. Or you can WhatsApp 925-3261. We invite you to share your thoughts with us if you so choose. Be a part of our discussion as we, sort of wind down today's Talk Today program. But as always, interesting and much better when our public weighs in with their thoughts. And like so many things, we are very busy. We recognize that as we go about our daily lives, not just the jobs that we have to do, whether we're employed for some organization or we are, or sort of our sole employee. We're running the business and running the show, or whether we are somewhat in between jobs or we're retired or otherwise. We're very busy. But with that, and as life sort of unfolds, what is it that is of concern to you? Is it like the caller prior who was sharing that, wait a minute, we built the runway way back when. We extended it a couple times and upgraded and resurfaced and did things. Why is it now that, again, the conjecture and speculation and all the other comments that we need to do it this way? Couldn't the other stuff in the past have worked? What about the sentiments of, well, do we extend it further into the North Sound or further in the opposite direction? And if so, how does that impact what we've done and are doing in the area? Or back to what, again, I think may have been Thursday evening or Friday, I heard someone share. The fellow said, do you remember when the discussion was back in the 90s, which seems like a long time ago, that we were looking at upgrading the airport then? Should we have moved it to what someone speculated would have been prudent thing to do? Okay, it wouldn't be where it is now, central to town, but how many airports are located in an area like that? Wouldn't it be better to be out further east? Now, is it too late to do that? Will that be something that in 10 years or less, or maybe more, that the country would have to consider, simply because, well, we didn't have sufficient foresight, or we weren't able to commit the financial resources, or whatever we, at that time suggest was the cause as to why we did what we did when we did it. Again, it is challenging, but as they share, hindsight sometimes can prove to be 20/20. Sadly, as the fellow said on Thursday evening, even then some of us are blind and unwilling to acknowledge, what transgressed prior, because when we make the projections for our future decisions, we seem to be still misguided. But again, where are we and what are we doing and how do we do it and can we do it better? And it may be, as some have shared, it is because of our work, our affluence, our interests, the connectivity that we have. We can easily travel, and not just to far and remote places, but sometimes we can meet in the middle, and someone could come. I'll give you a scenario, hopefully I recall it correctly. Person says, I work in an organization. I have a business meeting in New York or Toronto or London or somewhere else, and the counterpart has come in from Asia or from some other place, and may have met with someone who has come in from some other place that has now reported the coronavirus. And here we are in a third or fourth location, but somehow have had potentially cross paths with someone. Now, the latency of the virus, as some have shared, you could have it and not know that you have it. The allegation that some have shared that those thermal scanners or what have you that were being employed in certain ports, that they know, presumably, the allegation is that they're not as effective, that they're just a way to sort of appease the people's minds without it being effective. Now, if you heard the press conference earlier and the like, well, again, just lack of information, perhaps the lack of people being convinced by information that's disseminated, the fact that so many of us can so readily access information by the click of a button and just typing in certain searches, that we may, be convinced that what we're reading, seeing, hearing, otherwise finding out is accurate. It may or may not be. It may have been accurate at that time, 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years ago. But is there an updated, more accurate information now, speaking to the circumstances as they are now? But again, to what extent are we able to truly appreciate what is before us, and how do we as individuals take corrective and preventative measures to mitigate against any other negative impacts and consequences? Well, as they share, sometimes the responsibility lies on us, the individual, but then that person or agency or government or some other responsible entity or individual who is positioned, whether through appointment or election or perhaps even assumed position, now has a significant responsibility to shoulder. How is that being affected? And then how do we, who are impacted by those decisions, responding? And how are we being able to ensure that we are appeased? So it goes. 949-8037, or toll free with the kind compliments of Flow at 1-800-534-8255, or you can WhatsApp 925-3261. Now, someone had shared that it seems sometimes that when there is seemingly a reported discovery of a cure for something that may have affected societies, you're getting to the end nearing eradicating polio, or potentially a cure for cancer, or a perhaps more effective treatment for HIV, perhaps even a vaccine, or some other seemingly major breakthrough in medical technology and a way to perhaps cure, immunize, prevent, some other way, deal with something that plagued society. Once that is achieved or nearing attainment, then something else pops up. And as someone on Thursday shared, why is that? Why is it that it seems that the minute you make one step forward, you make one significant advance, or allegedly seem to be nearing such an advancement, that then you're plagued with something else? Interesting, no? 949-8037 or 1-800-534-8255. Those are the numbers we want you to utilize each and every time. And join us on our talk shows, engage with our panelists or hosts. Certainly embrace the opportunity to share your thoughts with the rest of us, so that as a people we start to listen, to talk, to ask questions, to contribute, and to be able to challenge certain things, but for the better. And if you believe that a certain agency isn't doing what it should be doing, well, is there a way to assist, to make sure it's being done better? Or if you're not, for whatever reason, able and willing to, but could your contribution, your information, your assistance improve the delivery of that service, the improvement of the things that agency entity is supposed to be doing? If it's that you feel as if the elected government of the day isn't being as responsive and responsible and effective, well, we can easily criticize, and I say that respectfully, probably easier to criticize. But is there a way that we can constructively add value and help not only to hold them accountable, but to be much more, committed to an outcome that is beneficial to as many of us, if not all of us? Well, we invite you to be a part of our continuing discussion and dialogue, and we invite you to share with us. Now, someone, would recognize that today is only Monday, but man, it's been the longest, so far. Well, God's willing, we'll be a part of tomorrow. We invite you to come back for our talk today, right after the midday news and midday meditation. As we would say, you share with us so that we can share with each other. At the end of the day, who knows where we'll be. Until then, be blessed.
Shaken yet standing firm.
I was not built to break.
This is Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.